Hello, everybody, and welcome to Android Design in Action, our sixth show. Sixth is actually one of the hardest words in the English language to pronounce, which I just found out. But Android Design in Action is a show where we look at different elements of Android design. We usually take a look at specific applications and how their user interfaces can be improved using the elements of Android design, which are very well documented on the Android Design site. But today, we're going to be looking at rich notifications and local video players, as you can see here in our slides. But before we get started, we should probably introduce ourselves. As always, my name is Roman Nurek.
Hi guys, Adam Kosh.
And Nick Butcher here in London.
Yes, and I should mention that Adam and I are broadcasting live to you from New York. All right, so let's get started with Android Design in Action, local video and rich notification. What we did today was we didn't look at any specific local video players that were previously reviewed on the App Clinic, and I believe they're actually just redoing that because of some sort of technical difficulties. But what we did today was, instead of looking at specific apps, we came up with an example app that did some of the some similar things, but it wasn't branded in any way. It's not kind of like a published app, and we have no intentions of publishing it. It's really just kind of a what if, what if we were to design a local video player from scratch. And we didn't do all the screens. We only did just a few of the screens, primarily around the browse experience. We won't be talking too much about video playback because while you're playing the video, there's a lot of things that you can really do. And we have some examples of apps that do it really well. For example, the YouTube app does a fairly good job at that. So if you're already starting to create a local video player or a video player in general, you should probably model your playback screen after something like YouTube. But what we did do is look at browse screens and things like that. Before we get started, anybody else have any things to add to the exposition for the show?
I'll just say at the top of the show that unfortunately we don't have a fancy studio setup this week. So while the stream quality might be a little bit lower, you can get the slides for download later. So if you're watching this, look at the description in the YouTube video, and there should be a link to get high quality slides. So if you can't quite make out all the visuals, then click through to that link.
Yeah, and we're going to post the slides in, I think, like 2560 by 1440 or something resolution, so you get all the little details.
Super HD something.
super HD, 4D, 4 dimensions. Okay, anyway, so let's jump into the screens. So this is our example local video player. And wow, I probably could have taken up more space on the screen than just that thinky little thing. But this is our example video. Yeah. This is an example video player that just, again, local content, and it shows you, a couple of things. And basically the rough structure of this app is that, you could imagine that you would categorize your local videos into different groups or categories. We'll show that in a second. And then, you might have a queue of, like, local videos that you plan on watching. And then you probably want to have, some sort of sense of what has been recently added, what I've recently looked at, or what I've recently added to my device. So this screen is kind of your up next screen, which is kind of like a dashboard or home screen. And we chose here to showcase the two probably most important things, in my opinion at least, for local video playback and for, in general, media consumption, is what's up next, right? Either stuff that I've recently added or stuff that I've explicitly added to a queue. Now you'll notice that there are a couple of things you can do with this queue. You can first, my mouse is moving, that's cool. You can first reorder the queue items by using this kind of dragging affordance to the left of each list item. This is something that again you could find in the Google Play Music app within a playlist to reorder tracks. And then below the queue, there's kind of the recently added list. And it's not really a list as it is more like a set of tiles. And you've seen this several times on the show. We use this this presentation of content fairly frequently because it's very versatile. It works across different device sizes. It works across different aspect ratios of content. It's in general very, very versatile. What I wanted to point out here is that there's a lot that you can do with this tile area. And it's going to be really hard to show here. Let's see if this works. No. So zooming in on my laptop does not work, unfortunately. But there's a lot of detail in these tiles. If you look at the top right tile in recently added, you'll notice that there's a little status indicator indicating that something is in the queue. So this is something that, again, you could use this for starring or bookmarking, or in this case, queuing. It's a good, nice little non-interactive indicator that this is a special item. And in this case, it really means this is already in your queue. And this is just like you would see in like Gmail or such. If something is starred, it has an indicator indicating that it's starred. The other thing is that you can swipe to dismiss items from the queue. So we're not really using a horizontal swipe for anything else on the screen. And even if we were, we'd be able to still use bezel swipe to access adjacent lateral content. But in this case, a queue is something that naturally lends itself to swipe to dismiss. So you can dismiss items, get rid of them off of your queue by just swiping them away. Before we move on to other screens, any thoughts, guys?
Personally, I think it's a really nice treatment. I think the problem with a lot of these video playing apps is they seem to concentrate a lot on the video playback, which is awesome. I mean, it's the core utility, but then they kind of don't make a huge amount of effort to follow any design guidelines for the kind of file management type tasks. It seems like it's a lot of apps like in the early 90s when everyone was building Winamp skins. It's all about the visual bling and like having 17,000 different format playbacks, but then no effort's being spent on the thing that kind of actually gets you into that process. So I really like the treatment here, especially I like the queue management features with the swipe to dismiss. I think that really works very well here.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of like how queue is given the priority here, and it's a sort of infinitely growing list, so there can be a ton of items in your queue. And then below that you've got recently added, which may not be as important, but kind of nice to browse, and you can possibly add those items straight to your queue, which they then get that nice little indicator which Rowan was talking about.
This is actually very similar to the People app too. Like in the People app you have your Favorites tab, and in your Favorites tab you have the top items, which are your starred people or your favorite people, kind of like your quick dial. And then below that, in case you haven't favorited anybody, or even if you have, it's kind of like extra content. It's kind of below the fold. It's not as important as your favorites, but your recent or frequently called or frequently contacted people are also something that you probably want to have access to.
Yeah, and then if your queue is getting kind of short, there's not that many items in it, then you instantly can see those recently added items and see if you want to add something into your queue.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's move on to the next.
I don't think you've mocked it up, but how do you envisage the action of adding something to the queue from here?
So, I mean, adding something to the queue is a good question, and we haven't gone into video playback or video detail screens. But I'd envisage that. Well, is that even envisage? Yeah, I'd imagine that when you long press any video from anywhere, right? You enter the contextual, I guess the contextual selection mode, and then you can long press multiple videos, and then in the contextual action bar you have kind of enqueue or add to queue, and then on the video playback screen, by default you probably wouldn't show the action bar, or probably be hidden because you want to have the full screen viewing experience. But when you touch the screen once, your status bar, your action bar, and your video controls pop up, and in the action bar you have add to queue, just in case you want to, or maybe it's called watch later or something, just in case you don't want to watch right now, right there.
Just to pick up one of those points, actually, I think the contextual action bar is probably one of my favorite kind of Android design kind of paradigms, because it lends itself really well to handling not only single selection but multi-selection in quite a elegant way, which I very much like. So if you long pressed on one video from this grid view, for example, you can see the action bar would transform into options suitable for a single video. So there might be a different set of options suitable to multiples. But then as you touch to select more items within the grid, the action bar can then refine its selection to just those actions suitable for multiple, which is, I think, a very elegant kind of design and a good way to handle this kind of thing.
And the other thing is just, users in general or Android users are very accustomed to using long press to trigger context menus. And in our case, I mean, and I guess since Android 3.0, I guess maybe 4.0, we've been using long press as really selection and context, entering a selection context and providing extra actions is really kind of a secondary thing, right? So first, select the things you want to act on, and then see the different options available to you, rather than long press and immediately have options or actions available only on the thing you interacted with.
So I think from some examples of that kind of behavior, if you want to follow up and look into that, I think Gallery does this quite nicely, and Gmail also does a good job of this kind of multi-selection behavior.
Yeah, and then we have a bunch of open source code in the IO Shed project, the Google I/O 2012 app, that does multiple selection and single selection contextual action bar. All right, so let's move on to the next screen. So let's say you touch that spinner. What do you see? And like I mentioned earlier, you have different categories. So your up next or your queued items would be a dynamic category that would be updated constantly. And then you could categorize videos into custom categories, like let's say family videos or TED Talks, since TED provides I think most of their videos in an open format, and then maybe cartoon clips, stuff that you're working on, things like that. And then this would be customizable by you, right? So maybe this is, depending on what app you're building, this could be folders, this could just be like tags or what collections, whatever it is. It's really up to you. This is just an example, so using a spinner. So then once you select one of the items, let's say family videos, you get presented with I guess the detail or the category detail screen, which gives you a list of items in that category that are organized by some attribute. So in this case, it's date. And then when you touch on the sort or the filter, whatever you want to call it, action button, you get presented with different ways to categorize your content. So this immediately lets you, apply filtering, apply a better, more easily consumable perspective on your videos, rather than seeing, extremely long stream of all the different videos you have. Even in a certain category, you can immediately filter by different, things like title, year, or percent viewed. And actually, percent viewed is something I want to call out. You can't really see it here, but in that tile, imagine that I've seen already 40% of the video. Let's say it's like a 2-hour wedding video, right? And I'm 40% of the way in.
Sounds like an exciting one.
So let's say I'm like 40% of the way in, right? I think one of the most important things to bubble up is that, hey, you've already seen 40% of this, and to finish off watching this video, there's only like 10 minutes left. So instead of showing the full duration of the video in the tile, in this case we've chosen, and again, you're not really going to make this out here, but there's a little like eyeball icon, and it says 72%. There's about 31 minutes left or something. So, so this is just one example of one of the things you can tweak within a tile, since you have lots of screen real estate. And like I said before, I mean, you have this this sorting option, and then from there you can choose, to filter by title. So the section headers would be like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on, year or duration, things like that. All right, and then the last thing on the screen is the tablet version, since we always like to show at least one tablet screenshot for the different things we look at. So in this case, we've taken a look at that initial up next screen. We've imagined what it could look like on a 7-inch tablet, in this case a Nexus 7, in landscape. So what you basically have is, instead of a stacked single list, you have 2 separate columns. On the left you have the queue, and the right you have recently viewed. And you'll notice that each of those list items has just more space. So for the queue, we've broken it out into kind of a larger item, larger thumbnails, same size text, but a different treatment of text. And then for the actual tiles, those again should probably scale to take up exactly 50% of their list in width, and then maintain the aspect ratio, right? So with that extra space, you can show more of the text, potentially, anything else you want to show about the video, like again, time viewed, or if people are tagged in it, you can show that, things like that. So that was the last screenshot. Before we move on to rich notifications, any parting words for, I guess, local video in general? Adam or Nick?
Yeah, I like the treatment of this screen. I think this is it's very nicely balanced. The way I think the things you picked out there about how the changes you've made from the smaller list view to the larger side-by-side view, it really calls out how you want to treat, like having thought about ahead of time how you're going to treat the different amounts of space rather than just stretching everything and keeping the same aspect ratios, but really kind of optimizing to take advantage of that extra space.
Yeah, I had one comment. Can we just go back on screen, I guess?
Yep.
What I kind of like about this is, I guess depending on the type of videos that you're looking at, the sort of ordering or sorting would be important. So for example, family videos, by sorting by date or by year in this case is fairly important. One nice thing to add here, and it might be there already, I don't know what you're imagining, but sort of a section indexer or a quick way to sort of scroll up and down.
Yeah, quick scrolling.
So if you had, a ton of different videos, maybe baby videos or wedding videos or whatever else, you could quickly skip up and down and look at all of those different videos.
Yeah.
And then if you have maybe TED Talks and you're sort of trying to look for something by title, you could switch to title and do the same thing. So sort of there's a lot of power here in being able to navigate through like a pretty broad array of different video types.
Yeah, and I think for TED videos, like one of the things that I would probably filter on is duration or percent viewed. So like I'm going to go on the train right now. I have 10 minutes, right? What can I watch from TED that's 10 minutes long? And like this is something that's really important to me in general is time. So like not only for local video but reading, right? For articles, you should always show the rough amount of time that this will take you to read. Because I know that I'm on the train, I have 5 minutes, or I'm walking to the train. I probably shouldn't be reading my phone, but I have exactly this amount of time. What can I do in that time? And I think that giving you the option to filter by size or length or duration, or I guess in the case of percent viewed, how much you have left, like 3 minutes left in this video, that's a fairly powerful way of organizing. The last thing I'd point out is that you'd probably make it sticky, right? So for family videos, you'd always do year. For TED Talks, you would, or I guess not always, but show the last sorting that you apply to that category.
Yeah.
All right, so in the interest of time, since we only have 10 minutes left, let's go jump into rich notifications. So, Nick, you wanna talk about rich notifications?
Yeah, just also a little note on this segment as well. So we're trying to introduce some more content into Design in Action. So as well as just doing straight up app redesigns, we're going to try and highlight some of the cool, awesome features that make Android really. So this is why we've picked rich notifications today to do a deep dive into like one of what I think is one of the more exciting features in the Jelly Bean launch. So Android's always had a very strong notification story. I think it's been one of my favorite features that it kind of unobtrusively lets you know what's going on without you having to dive in and out of applications all the time or have obtrusive kind of modal dialogues pop up. So it's been one of my favorite features for a long time. And what happened in the Jelly Bean release is they kind of got supercharged. They got added some lots of additional functionality. So we're going to take you through a few examples of what you can do and how you might go about designing for this feature. So straight up here, as you can see, this is a fairly standard looking notification, which we would call kind of like a 1 unit of size notification, or 1U, you might refer to it here, showing the standard information. So you have a headline and a subtext strapline. And what you can do is by running a finger down the notification, you can then expand it out to a greater size. So this is an example we've taken here for a video playback, an online video streaming service, which is, say you've just kind of paused or abandoned playback from another device or another computer or laptop or whatever, and we're taking that opportunity to then present the user with an opportunity to resume exactly where they left off. So I think this is hugely compelling, having this additional kind of still frame calling out the last moment you got up to, much more compelling than just a piece of text telling you that you can resume, which I really like. And right there's an action in the notification as well. So as well as providing information, it provides a strong call to action to then go and do this. And the reason we picked this video kind of resumption kind of idea was to highlight another feature of the new Notifications API, is the ability to have what we're calling opportunistic notifications. That is, by default, your standard form of notification will add an icon into the user's status bar so they can see, hey, there's a message waiting, something's happened requiring your attention. As of the latest release, you can now provide a priority to the notification, one of which is you can say this is a minimum priority notification, in which case the system will not notify the user with an icon, but it's kind of like opportunistic in the sense that if the user's in the notification tray, then we'll display it to them anyway. So another example of this might be Google Now, for example, which can let you know the weather and what it's going to be like for the next couple of hours. But it says, hey, this isn't super important information. I'm going to interrupt the user and tell them about it. But should they be in the notification tray seeing what's going on, then I'm going to present this information to them. So we've kind of used the power of this opportunistic notification combined with showing a large image and a strong call to action to kind of add a really cool little feature to a video streaming service there.
Totally. Yeah, I would love this for a Netflix or a Hulu or something. I'd love that ability to just just open up the notification shade and say, actually I do have a few minutes right now to watch the rest of this Futurama episode or something. Let me just touch that and jump into it.
Yeah, one thing I just want to focus on as well while we're talking about this is that some people might wonder, how is this crossing over the territory of what might go into a widget as compared to a notification? I'd say the key being the time sensitivity, really. I'd say this is the kind of thing you might want to pop up and just say for 15, 20 minutes, show this notification. If the user hasn't, jumped into it at that point, then I would probably remove it because notifications should be about timely information, whereas a widget can be more about just the latest things that have happened, more of a digest.
Exactly. All right, should we move on?
Let's.
All right, next one.
So we've harked back to one of our previously visited applications in Design in Action, and we've had a look at the London Underground application, which gives you information about what's going on the tube. One of the important things to me as a Londoner could be if there's a service interruption, if I'm going to have to replan my journey somehow. So that's important that they show me a notification. But rather than having to make me go into the application and kind of do something, what we've done here is if we swipe down on the notification, we've used the big text style, which allows you to provide additional textual information in addition to, once expanded. So here, there's an example of big text, lets you kind of let the user know what's going on, and I can process it. I can just swipe it away and get rid of it if I don't think the message is going to affect me, or I can then click through to take me into the application. So this is the example of the big text style.
Another option, let's say you have the ability to do, rerouting or something, and let's say this app knows about your trips or your destination. You could offer actions here, find an alternate route, or look at the, full details of. In this case, touching it should probably give you the details on the error or something, and then maybe an action is look at alternate routes besides, in this case, the Circle Line or the District Line.
Cool.
Lots of different options. Okay, next notification type.
So those are two of the built-in styles that come with the platform, which you can just say, hey, I want to show a big image, or I want to show a larger amount of text than a normal notification might. But with the updated notifications, you can also get a blank canvas and draw whatever it is your application wants to do. So we've revisited the TripAdvisor app, which we took a look at a couple of weeks back, and envisioned what they could do. So here, the scenario we're envisaging is someone's just arrived in a new city, and they've detected this location change, and we're kind of preemptively offering them to see what's going on, attractions around them. So straight away, the minimized version, you just say kind of a welcome to London, and it says see nearby attractions. But if we were to swipe down, we can actually provide a completely custom a layout within the notification itself. So here we're displaying two kind of tiles, picking out the top two near attractions near the user where they've just arrived in a new city, which might be kind of fun. But really this is just a window into your application, so you can completely extend your branding and your look and feel right into the notification bar.
Yeah, and then one thing you can offer here, again, as further actions, maybe see all, or search for a specific area. If for some reason the app accidentally just didn't get your location right, you could say choose a different location or something like that. So providing actions, almost always there are multiple things you can do on notifications, and providing extra actions are just it's just a really, really easy easy way to provide extra functionality without much effort.
It's one of my favorite functions on Android as well. It means it leads to less jumping around between applications. I no longer have to kind of go in and out, and have these context switches all the time. I find with the introduction of rich notifications, I find myself processing information and staying on top of things and doing quick actions straight from the notification. I find it really satisfying. It makes me feel super productive and powerful. So I really encourage all designers and developers to think about how you can use this newly expanded functionality in your apps.
Yeah, one quick thing I wanted to mention on the sort of technical implementation side is that the support library has a class called Notification Compat. that sort of allows you to build these rich notifications, but also gracefully degrade to earlier versions of Android. So it's definitely recommended to use that so that you can start using these immediately and not worry about maintaining compatibility for earlier versions of Android.
Yeah, basically, lets you not do like if build.sdkit.version codes or whatever. It lets you avoid all of that. It just does that for you, so you don't have to worry about it. It's totally useful.
It can also
you've got no excuses. You've got to start using them now, you're saying?
Yes.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay, we're running out of time, so let's do a quick fly through Android design news, shall we, Roman?
All right, Android design news. Da-da-da-da. We need like a drum roll or like a gong or something. Thank you. We actually have Daniel Pham from Mount. What's up, Daniel? And he's providing our drum rolls for this evening, actually this morning. So first, very quickly, so Taylor Ling, who's I guess a common name that we talk about on design or in our design news segment. Taylor Ling has come back and done a password manager redesign. So this is kind of like a reimagining of a password manager, basically something that manages your passwords. That kind of uses different techniques like the Google Now style cards and Crouton, which we'll talk about in a second. Croutons for kind of messages that pop up from the top. And it just, overall, in my opinion, it's kind of a solid starting point for kind of like a hollow style password manager. Moving on. Hollow There. Nick, you want to talk about Hollow There?
Yeah, I think this is a Tumblr that's been out there for a little while, but we just wanted to call it out. So doing similar to this show, they're taking applications and reimagining them in a hollow style. So if you're looking for some inspiration for how you might implement some hollow look and feel, then it's a great source for that. So if this is your blog, then get in touch on Google Plus or don't let us know, because we didn't actually know who to attribute this to, but keep up the good work.
Indeed. All right, Marie strikes again. Nick, since you just spent some time with Marie in Berlin, you want to talk about her recent work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've just got back from Berlin at the weekend where there was a dev fest going on, so it was great to kind of hang out with the Android developers and hackers over in Berlin. One of them was Marie, who is frustrated with Blogger's interface and thinks that it needs a little bit of a refresh. So she's taken the kind of slightly tired Blogger look and feel and given it a fresh, hollow coat of paint. So I think she's done a really nice job here of marrying the branding of Blogger, the quite strong branding, with Hollow, and not content with just that one redesign, she actually has also done a quite in-depth redesign of the Sixt car rental application as well, which I think is much better than the official app. So I really hope that Sixt are paying attention and can take a little look at perhaps hiring Marie to make this happen.
All right, moving on. Showcase view. So this is something that's come up a couple of times in the App Clinic even. So let's say there's something, and in this case I think it's kind of may not be used in the best possible way, but let's say there's something that's kind of like a very difficult to discover feature, and it's not necessarily like well labeled, like with some sort of gesture or something. Showcase view is a little tool that'll give you this kind of blue overlay that you can use as a one-time kind of help dialog or help, whatever you want to call it, help overlay. So when when user first opens the app, if there's something that's kind of very difficult to discover, then you may want to show this. Before you jump in and start using it, you should read our design pattern on help, which talks about the specific cases where you should use something like this. In general, you should try avoiding on-screen tutorials or things because your interface should just explain itself, and if there's a problem with labeling, then do better labeling. But if you do find an area where like it's a gesture or something that's like super important, then you may want to use Showcase view. And Crouton. Who wants to talk about Croutons?
Yeah, I'll take Crouton. So Crouton is initially, I think it came from a blog post by Mr. Cyril Mottier, who had some frustrations with the Android Toast class, which is a way of kind of like giving these transitive kind of messages that kind of show up for a little while and disappear. But some of the limitations of it were annoying him in that it wasn't really kind of attached to an activity. So if you were to show a Toast message and then switch away to another activity, the message may remain and be out of context. So he has come up with a Toast-like API for showing more contextual messages, so you can have info messages and error messages and so on, like within the flow of the application. So he kind of outlined this in a blog post, but unfortunately couldn't release any code. I think it was the IP was owned by his employer. So Mr. Benjamin Weiss, another Berlin hacker, has taken this idea and run with it and open sourced the Crouton library, which you can find on GitHub. So it's under active development and getting loads of contributions and stars. And I encourage you to take a look at it, and it might provide you a nice way to give these contextual in-app messages.
All right, and was that it? No, we had one more from Cyril Strikes Again. So this is Polaris. Cyril released a library called Polaris, which is built on top of the Google Maps add-on. It basically gives you things like standardized on-screen My Location buttons, standardized on-screen zoom buttons, also standardized on-screen info bubbles. So bubbles or balloons or whatever you want to call them that pop up above markers when you touch on them.
So yeah, I really like this for a couple of reasons. Not only will it make your developers' lives easier to implement mapping features, but for me, it also really standardizes the interactions, like to be very similar to Maps. So Maps is probably one of the most used apps on Androids, and if you kind of deviate from the kind of patterns, like where the kind of locate me button is or how balloons pop up and so on, then your app's going to just feel kind of slightly off. And I think using this Polaris library will really help in getting that kind of consistent feel.
All right, and I think that's the last one. Yeah, that was the last item. So that was Android Design in action for this week, October 16th or whatever. So I think that's all the time we have, and we're about 3 minutes over. So sorry about that. If you're running to your meeting and like you have your laptop or something, you're trying to catch the end of the show. Sorry about that. You can now sign off. As always, thanks again. My name is Roman Eric.
See you guys, Adam Kosh.
Bye from London, from Nick Butcher.
And catch you guys next week. Peace out.